Second item on the agenda, consider approval of the minutes held from the regular meeting on November 26th. Any changes or corrections?
I have none.
None.
Hearing none, they're approved as presented. We appreciate this full audience tonight. Both here and at home, we appreciate your interest in city government. If you'd like to approach the commission about a non-agenda item, you're welcome to come forward now. These are all agenda people. Next item is employee promotions and new hires.
Toby Doherty, City Manager. Due to the timing of the next announcement, I thought it would be appropriate to make my announcement that beginning in January 1st of 2020, the airport will be broken back out as a separate department. Jamie Salter will be the director of the airport. So in my direction, the airport was moved into Public Works in about 2008, 2009, and it's lived there ever since. Jamie started with the city in 2007, and she worked in the finance office, she worked in HR, she worked at Public Works, and then she took over as airport manager in February of this year, correct? She hit the ground running as airport manager. She not only adapted quickly, but she's thrived in a fairly difficult regulatory environment, which is just, it can be cumbersome, and she's thrived in the position. She's building relationships with regulatory officials that are going to be a benefit to the Hays Regional Airport for many years to come. So with her tireless effort and under the guidance of Jesse Rohr, Public Works Director, the guidance and leadership of Jesse, made me come to the conclusion that the airport probably shouldn't have been moved into Public Works and it should be moved back out as a standalone department. So I would like to introduce Jamie Salter.
Congratulations. Congratulations, Jamie. You may rue that day and you want Jesse back.
He's always
He's
there.
still there, just in case. Okay. It is my pleasure to introduce our newest addition, Brianna Robin, to you tonight. I'm sorry, I guess he has already kind of, Jamie Salter, Hays Regional Airport Manager, soon to be Director. Brianna Robin is our newest addition. She is hired as the Administrative Assistant. It will be November 21st, 2019 was her first day with us. She is an Ellis County local, actually growing up in Victoria. She previously worked at First Care Clinic and also the Paisley Pair. She enjoys traveling and remodeling homes with her boyfriend in her free time. Her positive attitude and enthusiasm has been a perfect fit for the airport. Actually, the first few days after she started, we had a snow event and we were out in the airfield, and she said, "I can't believe this is my job." And I too have had many of the same experiences, and that really touched me. She appreciates the beauty of the airport, and it makes her a perfect fit. Even in her short time in the position, she has made an impact, and I can't wait to see how her future successes impact the airport in the future. Thank you.
Both.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jeff Crispin, Director of Water Resources. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Graydon Clapp. Graydon's our newest water plant operator. Actually started with us on Monday, the 2nd of December, so we're pretty excited. Graydon is no stranger to the city of Hays. Started back in 2006, worked in the recycling area in our solid waste division. About a year after that, went over to the utilities area, worked in maintenance, and then back in 2015, I met Graydon. I actually started in October 2015, and we got a chance to work a little bit together for about a month, and then he left the city, and now he's back, and he's taken to this position really well. He's got a lot of experience already in the department, used to do many things within our department, such as water leaks, knows how things operate, knows our staff. So we're excited to have him on board. Graydon, he is married. His wife's name's Mary. They've been married for 19 years. Has Gunner, and I knew I was going to forget it, I told you. Gunner and Grant are his two boys that kind of keep him rolling. And like I said, we're just excited to have him back with us, so.
Welcome back.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
By the way, he is actually working tonight, so there's another person there that tomorrow night is his first night on his own, but he needs to get back to work.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Graydon.
Are there any others this evening? Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your evening to come here and join us. Welcome to the city. Next item is the consent agenda. These are 3 items to be approved unless objections are raised. First is a 2020 cereal malt beverage license renewals, and we have a list of those there. We have some appointments for approval. Care Council, we have some recommendations. I think that's actually flipped. The Care Council are for your consideration. I think we're approving the Hayes Convention and Visitors Bureau. The Care Council, Kim Thomason, has been added. That's for your, that'll be presented in December 26th. The Convention and Visitors Bureau, Linda Magis and Emily Vanderwage. The best I could do on that. Is there a motion?
Move approval of consent agenda.
Second?
Any discussion? There's no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 4-0. Update on Chestnut Street Historic District activities.
Good evening, Jesse Rohr, Director of Public Works. So the recent transfer of various ownership of properties of several of the Chestnut Street Historic District properties has kind of prompted a rush of activity by new property owners anxious to begin work on their new buildings. So due to this, the city manager asked me to give a brief overview of the city's role in historic preservation law, as well as the role of the State Historic Preservation Office, or I'll call it SHPO, throughout the presentation. So after being contacted by city staff, last week, representatives from SHPO from Topeka actually came to Hayes to meet with city staff and property owners, some existing property owners and some new property owners of historic properties in downtown. 7 different properties were represented at the meeting. After the meeting, the staff from Topeka did pay visits to each of the buildings along with the owners at the request of the owners to walk through the buildings and get a feel for upcoming projects. Here's a map showing the downtown district, and I'll show another map or two in a bit, but this generally shows the district boundaries. And again, here's somewhat of a crude map of the Chestnut Street district, points out contributing versus non-contributing, and I know you can't see all that. I'll show you another tool where you can see that. So in order to have you get a better feel of contributing and non-contributing properties, each of you should have a list in front of you tonight of the various properties in the Chestnut Street district, as well as some properties that are listed on the historical registry that are not in the district. I think there's about 80 properties just in the Chestnut Street district itself. So this is a map that can be found at the link shown on the right. The map is interactive, and it displays the district as well as contributing and non-contributing properties. Clicking on one of the various colored dots on the site will lead you to information regarding that property, whether it's contributing or non-contributing. It brings up a picture of the property, history of the property, and a lot of other information. So a really useful tool for anyone interested in that information. Excuse me. So the State Historic Preservation Statute applies when you are working on a project that directly involves a listed property. Some of you who are familiar with historic properties know that there used to be what they call the environs area as well. It actually impacted properties within 500 foot of a listed historical property. Fortunately for us in the enforcement world, that went away in 2012. That was difficult to work with for property owners. So now we only deal with the actual listed properties. The law gives the SHPO office the opportunity to comment on a project whenever it requires a state or local permit. They were very adamant that they are not the preservation police. They cannot force preservation of a structure that is in disrepair. They step in only when a project begins, and that has to be requested through their staff. So remember that one important thing, we try to tell people that while there are certain restrictions on these properties, there are also many increased opportunities. At last week's meeting with the Preservation Office, much of the discussion was in regard to various tax credits and grants that are available to property owners in the historic district. Many of the new property owners will be taking advantage of the tax credits on their upcoming projects. So the city, we have a limited role in the historic district or any other historical property. We kind of act more as a pathway to the preservation office and guide local property owners through the process. We cannot issue a permit by law until the preservation office has concurred with the plans of the property owner. The process works well, and our planning inspection staff over the years has established great relationships with the staff in the preservation office. I mentioned earlier that there are both contributing and non-contributing properties in the district. While the contributing properties fortunately get all the benefits of the tax credits, the non-contributing properties still have to get approval through the preservation office, but unfortunately, they don't get to participate. They were not eligible for any of the tax credits or other grants. This slide is courtesy of the preservation office, actually. There's kind of two ways they look at a project. Either when they review a project, they will issue a letter. A letter typically comes through to our jurisdiction here that the project may proceed as planned, or the project, it may show that it may damage or destroy historic property, and they'll make that determination. If that happens, usually they work with the property owner one-on-one and come up with plans that eventually get approved. On the rare occasion, properties do have to go through the governing body to, I don't want to say, maybe override the preservation office's determination. Like I said, I mentioned, the bottom screen here, that's their intent. Usually they're going to work with property owners. That's their ultimate goal. Many remember this recent project and property. This actually is one of those properties that came before the commission. The building was in severe disrepair, and demolition was upcoming. The preservation office stated that it would damage or destroy architectural features, and therefore declined to approve it, which we expected. It came to the governing body, and upon review, the governing body determined that there were no feasible or prudent alternatives to demolition, and therefore we were allowed to go ahead and issue the permit for demolition of the structure. That happened in 2012. Generally, local governing bodies will include the case on the agenda of a regularly scheduled public meeting. It allows for public comment and input on the project or the property. And again, they're looking for all relevant factors on the project before making that particular determination. And I mentioned the words, and the statute is very clear. The governing body has to specifically state there were no feasible or prudent alternatives to the plan by the building owner. Once the governing body makes a determination, 5 days after that, the property owner can move forward, and that's what happened here, and the building was eventually torn down. Here's some various pictures of historic building projects that have occurred downtown over the past several years. A lot of people think they can't do anything with historic properties, and you can see from these buildings, some of them maybe more than others, or there's significant changes made to them. All these projects had work done, and all of them were approved by the preservation office. So they're an easy bunch to work with, easy staff to work with. They thrive on these projects. They're looking to get grant money out, tax credits out, and several of these properties took advantage of that as well. So that I take any questions about the district or the process or the city's role in the historic district.
Of course, the role of this program, the tax credits, also piggybacks on the neighborhood revitalization district that was created as well. And the state tax credits have been about 7 to 9 million, and I think over 20-some million have been issued in the neighborhood revitalization district, where there have been tax abatements on properties that have been improved. So there are a number of resources available. Their program will also apply some maintenance. So if you have to replace a roof or windows, you can get tax credits for that, not rehabbing a building as these have done, but just simple maintenance on an existing building.
Right, and there are both state and federal tax credits available, and it's about 25% state and about 20% federal. So, and there's some properties down there that are getting 45% tax credits on the investments they have on their property. Some of them are keeping the tax credits, some of them sell the tax credits. They can get financing against the tax credit. So, some banks are buying tax credits.
They do. They pay up to 85, 90 cents on the dollar for it.
Right, last week I heard that some of them are up to 95% now, 95 cents on the dollar, actually. So,
Thank you, Mr. Rohr.
you're welcome.
Update from the Ellis County Historical Society.
Hello, I'm Lee Dobratz. I'm the director of the Ellis County Historical Society. I was asked to come and give an update on the status of our brick church at 100 West 7th Street downtown. I wanted to give you a little bit extra information that ties into the brick church to familiarize everybody before we discuss that. The building was built by the Historical Society after it formed. The building was bought in 1974. It was actually with $35,000 that was granted from the city so that they could purchase the property and get started. When they first bought it, the forefathers and mothers that got the organization going never intended for that location to actually be the museum. They knew that it didn't fit, but it was something that they could afford at the time to get a place to start gathering collections and archival materials. So they made it work. They made storage areas, they made shelves, they made exhibit cases, they did everything they could to run it the best they could for the longest time. They did keep things up along the way. There have been some big construction things, regular maintenance, replacing HVAC systems, things like that, that is sort of regular maintenance, but it is also very costly, especially for such a small organization. We were doing kind of okay with storage until we inherited the Sternberg collection when they redefined their mission, and we received most of their local history collections. At that point, we had nowhere to put the big things that they gave us, so we began renting off-site storage to house those things, which we still have, and we still have the off-site storage. So not long before I came, they started having trouble with water incursions from the edges of the roof, and I was told by a well-respected gentleman who had been involved with the Historical Society for a very long time that they had attempted repairs and that the repairs didn't work and we just needed a whole new roof, but we couldn't afford it. With just this year, when we had some storm damage and we're looking for insurance estimates to have the other roofs fixed, they went ahead and went up on top of the brick building, which is mainly a flat surface. It's that rubbery, flat roofing instead of shingles, of course. And they said, oh, well, these leaks are right along the side, and they used the wrong stuff to fix them. That's why it's leaking. So literally, in about 30 minutes, they took up some more of the correct roofing material and stopped the leaks. So since I couldn't find a copy of the picture that wasn't on my phone just a bit ago, but if you saw the picture in the newspaper on the Hayes Post where there was like a hole and you could see the plaster on the outside with the bricks, that was about a 4 foot by 4 foot chunk of plaster that fell in that was associated with the rain and the water coming down inside the exterior wall. That's all fixed now, which is awesome. So in conjunction with that insurance estimate, we also I think they just finished like 3 weeks ago, we had the roofs on the Stone Church, the Fire Museum, and the Volga German House completely replaced. They look very nice. And we also had patches put in on the 2-story residence that's on our property, even though it's not currently housing anyone. We've gussied that up to make it look nicer and make the city inspector proud of us. So, water running down inside the walls. They had known for a long time before I came that there was some mold in the sub-basements. Since it's a split-level building, our offices were in the lower portion, and then there was a place to step down from that, and we have 2 sub-basements, and then another room under the stone church where our heating is for that part of the buildings. The sub-basements were humid. There's some dirt basement. There's some, not foundation, but exterior walls that aren't in the best shape. And it had been getting moisture for a long time. We did run dehumidifiers in there, and then it got to where we couldn't really keep up because we had seepage coming from a different part of the exterior wall, kind of down beside the grass, and the concrete was getting wet and staying wet long enough inside that storage that it was affecting the humidity. And since it had soaked through the thickness of the concrete, there was really not much we could do except wait for it to dry out. So, if you don't mind, I have 2 sets of photos to pass out for you folks to share. Is that okay? I apologize for not having slides for everyone to see. The top slide the top photo that you see is of our current situation in our off-site storage. Where we have the storage, the roof is badly damaged, and the owners are choosing not to fix it. So we needed to get out of there. We need to get out of there as soon as possible. The ceiling tiles and water are coming in through the roof and landing on the things that we have below.
Pardon me for interrupting.
Uh-huh.
So you're in the Hayes Daily News building.
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to say that, but
Well, you're a public agency, but
Yeah.
whatever. You're in the Hayes Daily News building. Okay. You confused me that maybe the place you're renting now was leaking, and I was a little confused.
yes, the place that we're renting now is leaking badly.
Not next to Orscheln's.
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
I'm
not
a
the
little-
new office location.
All right, thank you.
This is this
I
is the
apologize for the interruption. Go ahead.
okay. This is the area that we rented to house the Sternberg collection
Right.
when we inherited the Sternberg collection. So it's in bad shape. I was just in there a couple of weeks ago. It already smells bad because the water's coming in and soaking into wooden objects. And until we can move it out, there's nothing we can do. Our hands are tied. I don't know that there's anything to do, even if we could. So we believe we have secured another location that will give us enough space to move the things that are in the most peril, which is our offsite storage. As soon as all the details are in place, then we'll be moving that stuff as quickly as we can to try to save what we can. After that, then we get back to the main property with the brick and stone churches. August 1st, we closed the exhibit galleries to the public because with all the water that we already discussed and with the heavy rains that happened this spring and summer, the mold that we knew was in the sub-basement exploded and we were all sick. I was even getting sick, and I was one of the I went the longest time without having any ill effects from it, and then all of a sudden everybody in the building was getting sick. So the board agreed to let us move out. We moved our offices and the portion of archives that we use all the time to a new location up near Orscheln's, which is what Mr. Schwaller referred to. And since then, we've been good. It's nice to have a place that has clean air to breathe. So in the meantime, we have storage. We have all kinds of items down there. The exhibits are still down there. We're covering what is prudent or putting archives materials in boxes with lids so that we stop the progression of what has already happened or hopefully prevent further infection into clean materials. So moving forward, the first thing we're going to have to do is empty everything we own out of that brick building, no matter what happens. Like I said, we have clean things and we have dirty things. You can't store them in the same place together because the infection will continue to spread. So in conjunction with consultants who specialize in removing mold from cultural items, we will need to learn how to properly clean these things. I had somebody ask me recently if it was like when you get mold in your basement and you get mold in the drywall and the carpet and you tear it out, you put back up the drywall and you're good. It's not like that at all for us, because we have probably 10,000 things in those 2 sub-basements, and each one has to be looked at and cleaned separately. And then watched. It has to be segregated and watched to make sure that there's no regrowth, because obviously, if you put an item that has regrowth back into the clean collection, it's all going to start over again. So that will be the very first thing that we'll have to manage over anything else, is rescuing those collections and beginning to figure out how we're going to deal with the moldy things. Past that, we obviously need a place to put all this stuff. So the last 2 printouts that I gave you are the floor, well, not the floor plan, but the overseeing plan for the most recent feasibility study that we had done. That feasibility study does include removing the brick church, saving the stone church that is independently on the National Register of Historic Places, and then building down the block. That is far from the only feasibility study that we've had done. They started studies in, I think, 1978, and we have probably 7 or 8 of them down there with all different ideas, including the one that was done in 2008 by Steckline Architects, and that included a remodel, updating, and just modernization of the brick church, which at this time in today's dollars would probably be $10,000 to $11,000. Million thousand would be great. $10 to $11 million just to renovate the brick church, which, what am I trying to say? Oh, which would still not account for the needs that we have for storage and some other stuff. So now the brick church, other than starting to deal with collections and moving out the things that we need to continue doing our job, I kind of feel like maybe the rest is for questions, so that you can lead me in what you would specifically like to know, because nothing else has happened for months with the brick building. So,
Well, the trigger for this, Ms. Overson, thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for your supporters. Patrick Zollner spoke to your board, I believe, in late August, so after the roof
Yes, he
was
did.
fixed. But he indicated at the meeting, and you agreed that the roof hadn't been fixed. And he's been back to Hayes a couple times to talk to various groups who are interested in saving the church. So that's why you're here. Because
yes.
there's an ongoing concern that perhaps the building isn't being maintained, and we wanted you to have an opportunity to address that.
We are maintaining it just as if we were there, except we're not there. We have the electricity, the water is everything on, the heat's turned on, at a lower temperature than would be good for us if we were there, but it's an optimal temperature for long-term storage. If we keep the temperature lower, we keep the humidity lower, it's better for the artifacts, and it helps keep that mold from reblooming and spreading even more.
But again, the question that mentioned that he made at the board meeting, I think, and thank you for the board members coming, that there was some maintenance that needed to be done still as of late August.
The
And-
roof?
Yes, he did mention that. He also mentioned, though, that the building was structurally sound,
Yes.
and he looked forward to you fixing the roof, and then there was a verbal promise that it would be. And there was some various board discussion, too, about replacing the shingles, as you mentioned earlier in your
Yes.
presentation. So the roof is fine, and there's no leakage into the property now.
Everything has been fixed.
Very good.
All the roofs have been fixed.
What do you have for your timeline? What's the next thing you're going to do?
Move things as soon as we have space. I have board members that are surveying the community with people they know, trying to find an economically appropriate solution for us. If we could, we'd buy a big old building and move everything we own tomorrow, but that's not possible. So we're plugging away with urgency, trying to find locations for that to happen. And as soon as we have locations secured, then we're going to be moving quickly.
Okay.
Are you fundraising? Have you done fundraising over the last, how long have you been here?
I've been here since March of 2016, so almost 4 years.
And have you done fundraising during that time to do some of the things that need to be done?
Yes, I've tried starting some newer, more modern methods of fundraising compared to how things were done in the past. Even up until my predecessor, if there was a project that needed done, someone who was a supporter of the Historical Society would be asked, and then that much money for the project would be given. So we don't have a history of regular contributions. They're just project-specific contributions. I have a great fundraising committee right now that's starting some new programming. Some of it's going to start this Saturday at Frost Fest Parade with the Blue Light Lady. We're going to have some fun with her. And they're also working on helping me come up with an endowment campaign. That's the smartest thing we can do right now, so we can stay open, so that we can continue to pay our bills, because our bills haven't changed just because we moved. We're still paying everything downtown that we were before. So that's where we're going right now. We have a very excited community member on our fundraising team who has had success in town before. And so we're hoping with her connections that we can spread our information farther and interest more people.
Do you have any kind of an estimate since you've been here, how much money has been raised in a fundraising efforts? Ballpark, I won't hold you to
Yeah.
anything.
I'm just thinking real quick. I think the average over the last 3 years of financials has been between $10,000 and $15,000 a year.
Are you writing grants?
Yes, ma'am.
And how much grants, dollars have you seen in the last 3 or 4 years?
The first year. I think about $25,000
A year or total?
for the total, because they were related specifically to projects, initiatives, and special employees.
I'd be interested in helping in any way I can with thinking about fundraising. This is, having done that in this community for 40 years, I can tell you we have a community that steps up.
Yes.
And hopefully whatever programs you're starting now will be beneficial. I'm surprised at that low number per year, because I think I would expect a lot more. I would think that the community would be looking to help.
Thank you.
Isn't a state of someone given endowment for building and maintenance?
It's actually an endowment for construction, capital projects, and acquisition of new collections.
Okay, so it doesn't cover building maintenance?
No, it does not include maintenance.
Okay, what's the present value of the endowment?
We have it in investments. I think between the two, it's about $220,000.
Very good. Are there any other questions?
I don't have any other questions. Sorry, Ron, if I stepped on anything. I just have a comment, and I stood in front of the post office and watched them tear down the Opera House. And I stood that night and promised myself that we weren't going to tear any more buildings down in this town. So anything I can do to help or be part of, I don't want to see anything else coming down in this town. And that's me personally. As a commissioner, I feel the same way. I don't speak for my fellow commissioners. But the thought of losing that disturbs me.
I appreciate that. Is there anything that I haven't gone over or in more detail?
I'd like to add to that. The Presbyterian was the first organized church in the city of Hayes. That's why it's called the Church of the Pioneers. And there was some confusion on your board, and maybe there still is. The brick building is historic as well. It's historically protected. And when as you were told, when the Historic Society applied for designation in 1976, it was too young, ironically, at the time, and that's why only the stone church was initially covered. But now, because of the historic district, both buildings are protected, as Mr. Rohr pointed out. As I've told you, the church is important to me because I was baptized there. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather's funeral was there, and 1926, this very month after the church had opened. And so there's a deep family connection. But as well, having lost the Opera House and having been in that the Saturday before it was torn down, it was rough, but something could have been done if the roof had been repaired and the foundation as well. And so it's really critical that if you don't want the building and if the space doesn't suit your needs, either button it up and use it for storage or let someone else have the structure, sell it. You own the entire block. I would do anything personally I can to help raise money. I won't be on the commission any longer, so I won't have this pulpit, and that's fine. But I do anything I can personally because, again, think about that. The first organized church in this community, and to tear down the brick building would be sad. And I also appreciate you scrubbing the Ellis County Historical Society, whoever did it, social media of the pronouncements about the building from a year ago, 11 months ago, because I think taking those down was very helpful. Some of them were quite unusual. So thank you for cleaning that up too.
Well, if you don't mind, because I know the commission follows me in this discussion, but for those that are here, we haven't looked at taking the building down just because we don't like it or because
It doesn't work for you.
well, it's a combination of things. It has to do with cost in remodeling, how much money we have, thinking of it as a business decision in addition to being a history decision. We've just got lots of ideas shooting out around there. And as for your reference to the social media, I just got a little excited after we had the full presentation about the new building, which are the last two pictures that you got, because it was very exciting. And we were well aware then, and I was that it was in the Chestnut Street district, which thereby involved it in the historical district and made it a place of import. I just put some stuff out initially that I shouldn't have said about taking the brick building down because it was still it's always been in consideration. I just got a little overzealous, and so we went ahead and took care of that as best I could. And so all of this stuff is still under consideration. And I appreciate not wanting to tear down any more historic buildings. We do have a beautiful downtown and a great history here. So we're gently plowing through, watching for trees to go around and trying to do the best that we can with what we have and what we need going forward.
I appreciate that. And as stewards of our community's history, it would be ironic if the Historical Society tore down a church. There aren't a lot of churches left in downtown. There's a gentleman here that has an office in one, but it would be weird for historic people to tear down an historic building, particularly one as beautiful as your building with the beautiful columns, the beautiful, rather ornate limestone work in conjunction with the brick. And many years ago, in fact, before I was born, we lost a church that was downtown due to arson, and people grieved that for 40 years. So let's not make that mistake again.
We will do our best moving forward.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
Airport Runway 422 lighting rehab, design engineering agreement.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm John Brown, Project Manager for the City of Hayes. And as mentioned, I've got with me the current Airport Manager, Jamie Salter, who you found out earlier, soon to be Airport Director. We're going to talk to you about the lighting rehab of the Crosswind Runway. This project has been on the airport CIP and was developed with the assistance of the airport engineer, Burns McDonald, who's been our airport engineer since 2006. The current request is for the design only of this project in the amount of $95,050, and that's 90% reimbursable by the FAA, leaving a local share of $9,505. The Crosswind Runway was constructed in 2003, and it included a direct berry edge lighting system, which Jamie will explain in more detail later. This particular rehab project includes new medium-intensity runway lighting along the edges in cans and conduits versus direct bury. Has new runway end indicator lights, new precision approach path indicators, new lighted signs, and a new vault and regulator, all for the crosswind runway. And so I'll turn it over to Jamie to explain all those different terms and lighting systems.
The project will include the runway lighting and signage. All lighting will be upgraded to LED, which will be more reliable, last longer, and use less electricity. In addition, the LED lighting will enhance airfield safety by increasing visibility to both pilots and ground vehicle operators. Last week, Mayor Schwaller asked if we were experiencing issues with the current system. The direct bury system has a useful service life of about 10 to 12 years. Next year will be 17 years since installation. Although there have not been any major problems with the current system, each year deferred increases the likelihood of significant issues. The new system will be buried in cans and conduit with an average useful service life of 20 years, although many last much longer. The cans and conduit will provide additional protection of equipment and make it more accessible for maintenance. The precision approach path indicators will be replaced on both ends of the runway. This is a 4-light system utilized during landing operations to provide vertical glide slope guidance. As you can see in the visual on the right, this is what a pilot will see. If a pilot is too high, they'll see all white. If it's too low, they'll see all red. And they're shooting for, on the left side of that pilot's eye view, 2 white and 2 red, which means they're on the correct descent path. The project will also include replacement of the runway and identifier lights. These are a set of synchronized flashing lights on the corners of the runway ends. These lights are used on approach for landing to identify the beginning of the runway pavement, especially during reduced visibility or night operations.
So financially, this, like I mentioned earlier, this project was in the capital improvement program. And when you combine the $95,000 cost of design engineering with the slightly over $1 million cost for construction, you have about a $1.2 million project, and which is eligible for 90% cost share with the FAA. So that leaves about $111,870 as a local share. And there are adequate funds in the airport improvement fund to cover the local share of this project. So this work authorization is the first step in the process here. And if approved tonight, we'll get the engineering design agreement to the FAA in short order, with the preliminary design reports due to the FAA ready on December 31st. So the engineer will get right to work on this. Final plans and specifications will be in February. We'll open bids in March, submit the grant application right after we open bids by May for sure, and begin construction this summer and probably into the fall. I might mention that any work in the safety area of the main runway will be done at night or in other times that do not impact the commercial air service. So this project will not impact the United Express flights that we have coming in and out of Hayes. So your options are to approve work authorization number 3 from Burns & McDonald, reject the project, or direct staff to another option. And the action requested is on the screen. And we both stand for questions.
Commissioners?
I'll make a motion that we authorize the manager to execute work authorization number 3 with Burns & McDonald in the amount of $95,050 with $9,505 city share to be funded out of the airport improvement fund.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you
both.
very much. Ordinances regarding annexation of property for Exit 157 development.
Hi there, Jesse Rowe, Director of Public Works once again. By now, I think most of us are very familiar with the Hess development and this particular discussion on annexation. The location of the property we're talking about is northwest of Hayes. It's on the north side of I-70 along 230th Avenue, just on the west side of 230th Avenue. This blue polygon here indicates the area that we're requesting annexation for. And within this area, there are actually 5 different owners requesting the annexation, including Ellis County, Celebration Church of Hayes, Duna Peterbilt, City of Hayes, and Hess Land LLC. I do want to point out and make it really clear, make sure everyone understands that other than the Hess property and the city tracks, they're on the west side of 230th Avenue, the only other property being annexed, as was consented to by the owners, is for right-of-way improvements. So the general properties of Celebration Church and Dunan themselves are not being annexed, just enough to make the right-of-way improvements themselves. Only the right-of-way along the properties, as I mentioned, is being consensually annexed for the purpose of making those improvements. Various language out of state statute requires the process that we've been going through. As you know, back in November, we came before you asking for approval of a resolution to take this the next step to Ellis County for their approval. That was done on December 2nd. Ellis County Commission did make the findings necessary by resolution to then move it back to the City Commission for consideration of the ordinance that finally adopts or annexes the property. Your options tonight, you can approve the 2 ordinances annexing the 5 different properties into the city limits of Hayes or not. And there would be 2 action items required, 2 different ordinances, one for the contiguous property, the City of Hayes tract, and one for the other non-contiguous property. And the action requested is on the screen.
I move we approve ordinance number 3975 for property held by Hess Land LLC, the Board of Ellis County Commissioners, BBJ LLC, and Celebration Community Church is legally described within the annexation ordinance.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
We have the second, did we have to approve that, or was that both?
Approve ordinance 3976 for property held by the City of Hayes is legally described within the ordinance.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries forward.
Thank you, Jesse.
We're gonna have a truck plaza.
Disappeared.
We're gonna have a truck plaza. That's awesome.
Disappeared.
Okay, the next item is also incredibly important. We're going to have a public hearing for the establishment of the Saffron West 43rd Community Improvement District. Again. Well, we are, so by announcing it, I'm opening it.
Okay,
I can
thank
only-
you.
I can only motion to close it. We've had this discussion.
Thank you.
So we're going to hear a presentation during the public hearing, and then we'll take any questions or comments from the audience. Kim, take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Kim Rupp, Director of Finance. The developer Saffron Hospitality LLC submitted a petition to the City of Hayes to create a community improvement district. They also submitted an application for economic development incentives, as well as a required application fee. Commission adopted the resolution 2019-11 setting tonight as the public hearing. Proper notice was published and sent to the property owners within the district, all as required by Kansas law. Following this public hearing, if you wish to proceed, we'll ask you to approve a CID ordinance. This will establish the CID in the area shown here in the map in red. This is defined in the ordinance to be an area just to the west of the Old Chicago and south of the Hilton Garden Inn Convention Center that's currently under construction. The ordinance establishes a 2% CID sales tax to begin January of 2021. The term of the CID will be the earlier of 20 years, or the total reimbursement of the CID cap, which is indicated at $622,836. This will be on a pay-as-you-go basis. Therefore, no bonds will be issued to reimburse the developer for eligible project costs. The city is allowed a 0.5% administrative fee to oversee the CID disbursements. And finally, this ordinance establishes compliance with the development agreement in connection with this hotel. So adopting the ordinance will authorize the execution of the development agreement. The development agreement provides for three main areas, defining and limiting the city's participation, placing project requirements on the developer to earn the CID sales tax, and allow for remedies to the city should Saffron happen to default. As far as the city's agreement portion of it, we agree that it'll be a 2% CID retailer sales tax imposed on the property in defined area, as we saw on the map. Those collections will be reimbursed on a quarterly basis to Saffron to reimburse them for CID eligible project costs, capping out at the $622,836. The term of the CID is the 20 years, or the CID cap. No bond issuance, meaning it's a pay-as-you-go reimbursement, meaning the developer fronts all the costs of the project up front, and they're estimating that to be a $7,046,870, with the anticipation of the CID reimbursement cap then. Developer has provided in the agreement that they will construct an AVID IHG flagged hotel with the necessary infrastructure to serve the property. They expect the project completion to be December of 2020. However, the agreement does provide they'll be required to provide a certificate of occupancy no later than July of 2021. So their incentive is the fact that the CID begins January of 2021. On that completion, they'll certify to the city for reimbursement of eligible project costs. Saffron also provides that they will maintain the property under the AVID IHG flag, and any change will require approval by the governing board. Other items included in the development agreement provide for ongoing maintenance of the property, no prohibited land uses, and compliance with the city's economic development policy. That includes an annual report and certificate of good standing with the Kansas Department of Revenue. Remedies allowed in the development agreement include a 30-day notice on either party's part, development agreement termination, and ceasing of CID sales tax reimbursement, as well as other remedies provided by law that allow the enforcement of provisions in the agreement or preserving the rights of the city. So your options will be to approve the ordinance creating the CID, do nothing, or provide other direction to staff. So after you hear comments and close the public hearing, our recommendation will be to approve the ordinance establishing the Saffron West 43rd CID, levying the CID sales tax, and authorizing the execution of the development agreement.
Anyone would like to come forward and address this project, please come forward and step up to the microphone and state your name for the record.
Okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lee Purdy. I'm the operations manager for B&O Motels, Inc. We operate the comfort, the sleep, and the quality here in town. I also serve, excuse me, on the CVB Advisory Committee. I'm here of my own accord. However, I do have the support of some of my managers here in the audience tonight as well. But I'm here today because I just want to kind of provide another alternative viewpoint of somebody in the industry. So, of course, they're welcome to build this hotel. They can obviously do what they like, but I don't think it should be at the expense of the taxpayer. At the end of August, I sent an email out to the commissioners discussing a different hotel project, and there was a quote from a Hayes Post article from a commissioner that says, one commissioner does not have the power to stop a business. We've received emails even the last few months asking us to stop competition for particular businesses. Our response to them is we cannot regulate what comes in and what does not come in. In fact, we want more businesses, but I want to clarify and say, in my email I said to please be prudent when approving TIFs, etc., of any other hotel rooms for the area, and to take this information into consideration in your discussions and your decisions. So that's what I'm here tonight to do, is to discuss the approval of the CID. So another comment that was brought up from the email thread was that we may see opportunity when comparing today's inventory to what we had in the past with the closing of the Ramada, etc. I do just want to reiterate that our current hotel inventory is 1,031 rooms. Peak inventory was 1,119 rooms. So at this moment in time, there's a large amount of rooms currently in the pipeline for Hayes right now. So we have Hilton Garden Inn. They're adding another 100 rooms. The AVID will be proposing 79 more. And the Travel Plaza is also proposing an additional 2 more hotels. We don't know what the room count will be on those just yet, from my understanding. I do know that one of the proposed brands will be a Mainstay. So I would just like to say inventory, I don't think, is the best way to look at the issue, as it doesn't take into consideration a number of factors. But what I do think is important is the way that our market operates now. And I'm going to discuss with you the STAR report for the city currently and how the Hayes hotel market compares to other Kansas markets. So if you look at figure 1, that's the most recent weekly STAR report for the Comfort Inn. And just to kind of give you a synopsis of the terms, ADR stands for average daily rate. So that's revenue divided by number of rooms sold for those not in the hospitality industry. So that would mean a 10-room property that sold 5 rooms with a revenue of $1,000 would have an ADR of $200 for that night. RevPAR, on the other hand, is revenue per available room. So this is your revenue divided by the number of hotel rooms at the property to sell. So a 10-room property that sold 5 rooms with a revenue of $1,000 from the previous night would have a RevPAR of $100, if that makes sense. And when it comes to indicating hotel performance, RevPAR percent change is the best indicator of how a hotel is doing. So when I say percent change, I'm sure you guys understand, but just to, while we're defining things, it's the amount of change, positive, negative, or flat, expressed as a percentage comparing a period versus the same period last year. So it's calculated as this year minus last year divided by last year times 100 to get that number. So for the Comfort Inn, our competitive set includes most of the upper mid-scale class chains in Hayes. So this consists of the following properties. It's the Sleep, Hampton, Best Western, Fairfield, and Holiday Inn. So it does not include the Town Place currently. In looking at that most recent weekly STAR report for the Comfort Inn, or monthly, sorry, it's not weekly, both the running 12-month and the year-to-date, you can see that the Hayes market is down compared to both the Kansas market and the I-70 corridor Kansas markets are up, or they don't have as much growth. So looking at that percent change means that we're not receiving our fair share. And this could be caused by a multitude of factors, but I think if you ask a lot of the hotel operators in the city, the biggest culprit would be the opening of the Town Place Suites. So still a year and a half later, we are still feeling the effects of that opening. So every time a new hotel opens in our city, it affects the ADR of every single other hotel in the area, because it's common for new hotels to come in, they price low to attract and build a customer base, right? So regardless of what market segment it affects, directly it's a trickle-down effect. So Holiday Inn lowers their price, Hampton lowers their price, Comfort lowers their price, and so on. We need to set the correct rate so that we're remaining competitive against a brand new inexpensive property. So, for example, why would a traveler pay $120 to stay at a different mid-scale property that's 10 years older when the new hotel is only priced at $100? So I think the major point to take away from the ADR bullet is this in turn is going to affect the transient guest tax that the city's currently collecting to pay for our roundabouts. Lower hotel prices means lower taxes collected. I do also want to point out there's no established brand recognition currently of AVID. The first one only opened up a little over a year ago, August 2018. And as of today, Thursday, there's only 7 properties you can currently book at. And then I would also like to point out a recent Hayes Daily article incorrectly called it an extended stay hotel. It's not an extended stay hotel. It's more accurately defined as a micro hotel. So these rooms are 30 to 50% smaller than a Holiday Inn Express, so you can have 30 to 50% more rooms at the property. So looking at the developer brochures put out by the brand, it's a product designed for big cities. So I do also want to point out figures 2 through 6 in the folders I passed out to the current operators for the roadway we can all remember, spray painted a tarp when they first became the Hayes Tiger Inn. The second sign that they put up did not spell roadway correctly. And this was fixed by putting up a sign where you could still see the original spelling underneath. And unfortunately, I found the images presented to you on the Ellis County Facebook Fails Facebook page. So in addition to that, I mean, the social ranking on Medallia as of Tuesday, they're number 13 out of the 13 reporting hotels in Hayes. So that's not to say that budget hotels can't be nice. You can see Super 8 and Econo Lodge rank very high on that report. It's because Sean does a great job of operating them. I know Econo Lodge has won gold awards the past two years. So I just want to say, please take this information into consideration when there's an indication that we don't know if this will succeed in our market. And we do want more businesses. That's great. I am totally on board with that. But I do also want to say, recently we had a Representative Grow Hayes sit in on our last CVB meeting, and it became very apparent to me that city officials are extremely unfamiliar with how the hotels operate. So I'm just also concerned on a personal level that we may be helping to build another empty abandoned structure near I-70. So they've already had to scrap their idea of building a La Quinta that was supposed to open in April of this year. But I do, just to sum up, just want to say thank you for your time, for listening to me. I appreciate you taking this information into consideration. Once more, I would like to state, I hope you're prudent in your decisions. I take a lot of pride in the city. My great-grandfather opened up State Glass Company here in town. My uncle's grandfather was President Wooster of Fort Hayes. And I just take my role as a hospitality ambassador very seriously. So if you have any follow-up after tonight's meeting, I do have my business card, if you would like. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Purdy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, to clarify, though, Ms. Purdy, the taxpayers are not paying one dime for this. The individuals who will be staying, the individuals, I'm not debating you, the individuals who stay at the facility will pay a tax. So the taxpayers at large will not be responsible. The residents of Hayes will not be paying any tax to support this facility. If they have no business, then nothing happens. They still have to make up. They are getting reimbursed. Again, if they have no business, the city of Hayes is not going to bail them out. They will maintain this property as an IHG property. It doesn't matter to us if they're 8 avids or 80 or 800. The extended stay comment was a misstatement on my part that the Hayes Daily News, so let's not make fun of them. The truth of the matter is that when people travel today, at least I do, and I know that at least 4 others of us do, we either are racking up IHG points, Hyatt points, or Bonvoy points. And it very well may be that Town Place Suites has taken away some of your clients. I'm sorry to hear that. Again, they were funded with a similar scheme, by the way, as has every property by that developer. So this has been going on for 20 years. And it may be true that when one opens, others get hurt. But travelers today are looking for specific branded properties because as they accumulate points, they can do something else. What these individuals have done with another property in town is of no interest to me. And as I said to you in the email exchange, and I said publicly, we are not going to keep them out of town because we don't want competition. If they have met the threshold for getting the CID, they are going to make the investment. The city finance director talked about the criteria they're going to have to meet to keep and get the money. So as far as I'm concerned, this is important. Again, we are down rooms, and in this segment, we believe this is very attractive. So, again, if you'd like to continue talking, you'll have to come to the microphone, and I'm not going to debate you. You'd like to come to the microphone and talk? Okay. Would anyone else like to address this project?
Hi. My name is Mitesh Patel. I'm a developer of Hilton Garden Inn. I just wanted to know, my understanding was for CID that you cannot start the project without CID being approved. And CID is to help support the project, but that project is already started. So they don't need money to sustain that project.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. I believe that the city finance director can answer the question.
I can actually answer that.
Good, go.
So the applicant submitted the application and stated that, as per the city's economic development policy, but for the incentives, the hotel won't be built. The applicant asked if they could begin dirt work on the property. As a property owner, it's their right to do dirt work on it. So the applicant chose to do the dirt work. I can tell you there's no above-ground improvements there, and there would be no above-ground improvements that would be tied to this, that would be done before action.
And
But,
what,
I'm sorry, go ahead,
that
John.
would be no different than what's going on with the Hess property. They've been moving dirt for
Correct.
months, but they haven't built anything.
Correct.
Years, yeah.
Right,
actually.
and none of that dirt work is eligible for improvements.
Right, right,
Based off of any incentives, right?
right. I'm just,
Anyone else like to come forward?
Mayor,
Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Byrd. If they meet the criteria, we've passed other CIDs. If we would reject this CID because it's too much competition or we feel like we have enough hotels, can we legally do that if they met their criteria?
The answer is you could, yeah. You could.
Even if they met the criteria?
You can decide not to follow your own policies.
Oh,
Okay. I mean, no one can stop you from changing your mind on your
Sure.
policies.
the policies, okay.
That's a political process and not a
Okay.
legal one. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments on this public hearing? Go ahead, come forward. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Rujan, sir. I came all the way from Oklahoma City.
Congratulations.
So thank you. Like one of the lady here said, it's Roadway Inn and this new hotel is completely different. The owners are different, as you can see in the application. And Avid is the fastest growing, the same as Hilton True. It's a contemporary kind of aloft looking style. There is no other hotel in the city. That's why we had to let go so much money for La Quinta and still chose Avid more than La Quinta. So we take pride and we look at the numbers like what she has said. And we still think Hayes is a very, very good market to build a hotel. And we are putting so much money. We have done our math and still I think all the hotels in town will do good.
Thank you for your comments. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries 5-0. Regarding the ordinance, what's your pleasure, commissioners?
I'll make a motion that we approve the ordinance 3977, establish the Saffron West 43rd Community Improvement District, levying the CID sales tax and authorizing the execution of a development agreement.
Second.
Any discussion?
My discussion is, we have a lot of hotel, motel rooms here in town, but we also have times when we have sporting events, we have graduations, we have Oktoberfest, we have Wild West Fest. There are times when people have to, because of the lack of space, need to stay in Waukene and Russell, and we hear those complaints, although there again, we don't drive the market, the public drives the market. So I don't have a problem with doing the CID on this, and as the mayor presented, that this 2% is paid only by the people that use this motel or any of the other motels that have CIDs. So I'm in agreement with this. And it meets our economic development policy. And we've spent years tweaking that and tweaking that.
Yeah, I would agree. And, I've actually in the Comfort Inn, Sleep Inn, I've had family many times stay in your hotels, and they're some of the nicest hotels in Hayes, and very much appreciate that. But as a a very small business owner in town, I have competition that opens up almost daily. And do you like it? Absolutely not. But it also, I think, sometimes makes you better. And you actually kind of look yourself in the mirror and like, what can we do to be better? And I mean, I don't think any of us want to put anybody out of business. I know we don't. But we also want to gain business. And I really think they wouldn't be coming to Hayes if they didn't think they could grow business in this town. And so that's why I'm for it.
Ms. Purdy, excuse me. I appreciate you coming tonight. I appreciate all the information you brought. I happen to know the B&O hotel operation, and the educational process you've gone through is very, very good, and I appreciate all the information. I echo the feelings of my fellow commissioners. I don't think that I'm probably ever going to do anything to keep business out of our community, especially when it's a CID such as this. But I do appreciate the passion, and I think it'll make us all better, is my opinion, and I will be voting yes.
The hardest thing for us that have been here for a while is that when we lost the Holiday Ramada Ambassador, we also lost a number of conventions that didn't even have conventions of the property, but they used it for rooms. So I do understand the various tiers and prices, and I happened to study from Lloyd Lundy, who was one of the best, and he walked me through the STAR report many, many years ago. I also know the owner of your company. He spent many hours in my office as we pursued an $11 million grant to fix Vine Street and provide access to 41st Street. He was adamant that 41st Street stay open so that he could not only maintain the beautiful hotel that you manage, but also the sleep-in property. And I worked very hard working with our state senator and Kansas Department of Transportation to make sure that there was access. So you're, in a way, the property that you manage today and do so well at, and again, it's highly regarded, is because I worked with the owner of your property to ensure that this massive $11 million investment allowed this property to continue to have customers and grow. So we're not picking winners or losers. We're simply making an even playing field.
Let me say one other thing.
Sure.
As far as the CID, existing hotels can apply for a CID, only for hard goods, not soft goods. And so we are hoping that some of these hotels, older hotels, will go ahead and apply for a CID for their hotel in order to keep it fixed up to date, keep it from becoming another ambassador hotel, that we don't want to lose anybody. So, but that is available for all hotels. But like I said, it's strictly hard costs.
Yeah, I would like to add on to that. So according to the Commission's Community Improvement District policy, there are a few project criteria. So there's a minimum size project that's $250,000 to be considered. Anything under that won't be considered. And then there is a 25% stake that the applicant has to have in a project. So if an applicant wanted to do $1 million remodel of a hotel, and again, it was renovation, remodeling is subject to that. And they would have to be a $250,000 stake, and then the rest could be utilized with the CID. Again, no soft cost, only hard goods.
And if you're interested, you can come in and we'll provide you with the details.
Doug Williams knows the details as well.
You'll see Doug Williams for the details.
The changes to our economic development policy, I can't take credit for it. It happened before I was here, but I feel like we've really worked hard and got a very solid policy. I'm proud of what we're doing at this point. Of course, we'd always look at a change if there's need for it, but I'm really proud of what commissioners before me put together in that policy.
Call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries 5-0. Well, discussion of public use at the R9 Ranch.
Toby Doherty, City Manager. I would like to speak with the commission tonight about the long-term use of the R9 Ranch, aside from a public water supply for the region. What you can see here in the visual is the R9 Ranch. So, so our property starts right here, goes up, and then goes down to the southwest side. This is the extent of it. The property to the lower left was the part of the R9 that was decommissioned first back in 2009 and 10 and 11 with the EQIP program. That was a program that paid landowners to take irrigated circles out of production and either dry land it or fallow it, and you were paid a certain amount of money each year. In 2013, when Use It or Lose It, or 12, when Use It or Lose It was repealed, for the area, we began a long-term plan to decommission the ranch. The ranch is fully decommissioned 2 years ago. The infrastructure has been removed and the property has been planted back to native grass. Now, this is a sandy area, it's sand hills, along the alluvial, and so that grass is somewhat slow to establish, but there is some cattle grazing going on down in this part of the ranch. I would say from here down, there is some limited cattle grazing. The other properties are newly seeded, or parcels are newly seeded, and they aren't grazing. The City Commission and the Russell City Council both agreed early on in this process that aside from a water source, the next highest and best use of the R9 was for public good. Given this is owned public entities, they look at using it for public good. We had always envisioned some form of walk-in hunting and a cattle operation at the R9, and we have been working towards that. About 3 years ago, I met with then Secretary Jennison at Wildlife Parks and Tourism and some of his staff in Topeka about walk-in hunting and the process to convert it back to native grass. Wildlife Parks and Tourism was excited about the potential, and that's where we left it. More recently, I've been contacted by Wildlife Parks and Tourism officials about exploring something that could be more enhanced than walk-in hunting at the property. I don't know what that would look like. That's why I'm here, to get your blessing before we move forward. Some of the things I heard bandied about was hiking and horseback, along with hunting. We are still looking at limited access to the property. Keep in mind, we're going to have a series of well fields through here, but we're looking at limited access at a centralized location or maybe two centralized locations, and then you would either be on foot or maybe possibly on horseback throughout it. But before I went too far, I wanted to make sure I had your blessing to at least enter into talks. Again, I don't know what this entails. I kind of know what walking hunting entails. Walking hunting means you put up a placard and people can come onto your property and hunt, and you're listed in a statewide database. But something more enhanced than that, I want to see what the state has in mind, if you are okay with that. I would like to find out what they would envision for the property, how that would coexist with a cattle operation, what resources they would have to support that, and what their intent would be long-term. But I wanted to get your input and blessing before I reach back out to them.
I don't think I have any opinion against you visiting. I don't know what can come. I think talk about it, find out every opportunity we can. We want to do the very best we can for any part of this property. I'd say listen.
Sure, I'd say talk and see what they've got, and then we can make a decision.
It'd be interesting to see if we could, I guess, show the people in that area, if we did something like that, the economic impact that it could have, maybe.
That's awesome. That's
I mean,
very
because
good
like
point.
you said, I mean, we want to be good neighbors down there, and as we are, I think. And I think if we could show an economic impact, I mean, why would they not want that? Or, I mean, I don't know if they can even give us that info, or if they would know.
I think it's one of the things we could estimate, and that's one of the reasons why it is kind of intriguing, because we know hunting has an impact. And Melissa can tell you every pheasant hunter we get, you know, between the first week in November and the end of the year brings a certain amount of dollars to the area. And so I think you can make the same extrapolation that if you had a 7,000 acre tract of walk-in hunting, you could realize some hunting dollars. I don't know the economic impact of somebody who's looking to go hiking or possibly ride a horse around, or what other type of recreation might be down there. There are not a lot of public use areas in that part of the state. And so that's why I would like to lean on Wildlife Parks and Tourism, not only tell me what the possibilities are, but what that could relate to.
They could probably help you with that economic impact, as could Melissa and the Docking Institute. They'll talk about how the dollars will circulate in that community as people stop and buy gas and maybe something to eat.
So would it be a state-run hiking or?
I don't know that. That's one of the things we want to talk about. I think the state officials that I visited with have some ideas that they would like to float to us, but they know as the owner, it would be a very lengthy and involved process to come to an agreement. And then, you know, we have to protect the water source first and foremost. But once that water source is protected, there could be something we can do that would benefit a lot of the public at the same time, and that's kind of what we're going for. So I want to see what they have in mind and what resources they have.
Great idea.
And if they don't, oh,
A drone fly zone.
a drone fly zone, yes.
Plenty of places. Nothing to bother down there.
I can't imagine they don't have economic numbers to talk to you about. Throwing that out makes everything a lot more attractive.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be anxious to hear.
Well, then I will visit with him and I will keep you in the loop.
Thank you, Toby.
Thank you.
Mr. Vice Mayor Musil, any inquiries or comments?
Thank you for allowing me to attend my daughter's Christmas program and being late for this meeting.
Anything for the pursuit of beautiful music?
Yes. No, I have nothing.
Commissioner Phelps?
Hello to the Boy Scouts again.
Yes.
You're here again.
Always
That's
welcome.
good.
Welcome back.
He looks excited. You did pick a big meeting.
I was excited to see the Boy Scouts. I have a 13-year-old grandson that got out of scouting, and his dad was an Eagle Scout. And I thought, I could never believe that he would really quit. Well, we found out 2 weeks ago he's going back into the program, and very excited about it. So I appreciate everything you're working towards, and thanks for coming.
Commissioner Melick?
This is our last televised meeting before Christmas, so Merry Christmas to everyone.
Right over.
No, that's fine.
We're out of
We
sync
were talking
tonight.
about Boy Scouts. That was
Yes,
You got anything else?
that's all I have.
Merry Christmas to all. You have a request for an executive session for 15 minutes to include the county attorney by himself.
City, that'd be the city.
I was aiming for higher
I
office.
haven't run for mayor yet, so.
Maybe he'll
Or be
show up.
You know what? He's just around the corner. City attorney, city manager, city project manager, and perhaps the city commission. Again, 15 minutes to discuss potential acquisition of real estate. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. No action will be taken, so you're all welcome to go home. Merry Christmas.